Legal. And today we have our lead paralegal, Lisa Parsons, to talk about how to identify and retain necessary experts for your high asset divorce case. Lisa, how are you doing today?
I'm good, Steve. How are you?
I'm well. So let's just dive in with the obvious question is, why? Why can it be necessary to have to retain expert witnesses at all?
So often, especially in more high asset or complex cases, it's necessary to retain experts to assign a value to an asset. So that may be something like a real estate appraiser to provide a market value on property that will then be used later in the case to discuss property division. It may be a business valuator to determine a value of business. It might be someone to determine the value of personal property. Sometimes you even need to retain experts to determine what the other party is capable of earning, a vocational expert that can provide information on what their employability looks like and what their typical income range would be in their field of expertise. So often in these types of cases, we're looking to experts to provide additional information and tools that we'll use in the divorce process.
If they provide these tools or provide this expertise, where does that go? Can the experts just say, here's the value, there it is, and that's the end of it? The judge will take that? Or do experts sometimes have to go to court and testify themselves?
It depends. With some appraisals, they will be disclosed to the other side. If the other side stipulates to those values, if they say, yes, we agree that this seems accurate, that's as far as it goes. But more often than not, we'll need these experts to appear in court and testify about how they came to the determination that they did in their eventual report that was provided.
Can the parties agree on an expert and
Not
say
always.
no?
Not always. So you can independently seek your own appraisal of an asset, and they can also independently seek their own expert to do an appraisal. And in that instance, you would have both experts come to court and present testimony of how they came to the determination that they did.
Are there some assets that just are more likely to require an expert? And I kind of think to myself, I'm thinking things like, I don't know, maybe like your home, your retirement account, maybe if you've got some piece of intellectual property like a royalty or a copyright.
Yes, that's exactly right. So pensions, those often do require an expert's involvement. Real property, more often than not, does. I'd say, the rare circumstances that they don't is if there's an agreement about listing it for sale and how that process would go, because you're deferring to a different expert that's going to help you to sell that asset. When businesses are involved that have assets, those are often a common thing that have to be valued.
Is this kind of the question is, does an expert have to be qualified? I mean, is there that are standards that are out there for experts, or can it be someone maybe who just has been in a business of selling it for a long time? And it kind of reminds me of the realtor versus the real estate appraiser kind of a thing. Are there degrees of experts?
There absolutely are. And typically, the degree of type of expert you need, it varies case by case. So in one situation or one case, it may make sense to have not only, an expert who has been in an industry for 30 years, but also, an expert who does hiring in that industry to provide information about, the marketability of that skill. It really depends on the case and the situation on what level of expert you need. Typically, we really want to have you work with your legal team to discuss and hire those experts rather than going out and using someone that you maybe know personally or is a good friend of yours, that may create an air of bias that can be raised in court if they're called to testify.
On the other hand, on that one, is it sometimes advisable to get an expert, not necessarily because something has to be valued and it's going to go to court for the value, as much as here are these things, what does that financially mean to me? I think about the difference between an IRA or 401k or this college savings account or that account. Can experts be used just also to sort of help the person plan into the future with
Definitely.
whatever they're getting?
It is really important, especially in these types of cases, that you are working with, a CPA or a financial advisor that can help you look at the long term or the post divorce, what things will look like for you, what type of income, or support you have for yourself. And so we definitely do recommend that not only do you work with experts to assist your case, but individually also work with experts.
Could someone be their own expert? Well, I mean, if they are in fact an expert in something, can they qualify themselves as an expert, or is that just a bad idea in general?
It's a bad idea in general. That might be helpful for background information, to provide to your team, but realistically, that's not going to be as helpful for the case or for going to court.
Last question. Can experts be helpful in terms of support issues? And because you always think of them, okay, the car's worth this, the house is worth that, but can experts be brought in to help maybe determine someone's ability to make money in the future, someone's costs depending on what they've got? I mean, does it ever come into support at all?
Yes and no. Sometimes we'll have clients reach out to an expert, to assist on cost of insurance, post divorce, to provide insurance for yourself, and we'll want to have that information. In some circumstances, we'll need to hire somebody to evaluate, like I mentioned, a vocational expert that can help provide information about employability. You can, in some circumstances, even hire a personal investigator to look into what's the other party actually earning, if maybe they're not disclosing everything, or they have a different type of employment versus a standard W-2 employee.
So an expert could also help find something that the other spouse may be hiding.
That's correct.
That's interesting. So we're about to go, but I do want to ask what would you say if someone just tells you, I don't need an expert, let's just go without?
Honestly, it depends on the case. In a lot of circumstances, we might be able to follow with that idea up to a point. But if we are not able to reach an agreement, if we're not able to settle on certain issues, experts will be needed and a case will get prolonged because of needing to retain those experts and give them time to do their job. So sometimes it makes more sense to incur the expense up front and retain them early, as opposed to waiting until the last minute in hopes to avoid that necessity or expense.
Right. And I imagine that the cost of the expert is often very much outweighed by the additional value that the expert can apply, make the property be.
That's exactly
So,
right.
well, thank you again for joining us. Very helpful. It's important to understand why experts are around and what they're needed for, and you make that very clear. And I imagine, like you said, high asset, complex divorces is where you really don't need to have your feelings, going into trying to evaluate stuff.
Exactly. Thanks for having me, Steve.
You bet. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. If anyone has further questions, feel free to contact our firm. We can get you connected with someone who can help. Stay safe.